Hello and welcome to my little bookish corner of the internet. My name's Harriet. Today I'm going to be filming my sort of late September wrap up. I'm sorry it's taken a while for me to film this video, I've just not really had much time with moving back home. But yeah, it's just going to be a really cozy video talking through the books that I read in September. I actually ended up reading a lot more than what I anticipated. I have technically included a book that I started to read in September and finished a couple days into October, but because I finished it so soon into the new month, I thought I'd include it in this list. But anyway, let's get into it. So I read The Switch by Beth O'Leary, which is definitely a romantic comedy type of book, very easy to read, following a granddaughter and her grandmother as they decide to switch lives to see if their lives change in a positive way, because they're both feeling kind of negatively about the lives that they are leading at the moment. This reminded me of The Holiday, which is one of my new favourite Christmas films. I only watched it for the first time the Christmas just gone and I really loved it, so I will be rewatching that this year, and this book did give me very similar feelings. It was very easy to read. I will say that some of the plot points were extremely predictable, but it was a very nice summer read leaning into the autumn winter season because there are mentions of Christmas in here. But overall I thought it was a very enjoyable read. I gave it a 3.5-star rating because it was just above average for me but didn't completely blow me away. Another book that I read in September was a non-fiction, and that was Erebus, The Story of a Ship by Michael Palin. I do have a full-length spoiler-free review which I'll leave linked down below, so I won't say too much about this, but all in all I thought it was a brilliant book, and if you want to hear my full thoughts do have a look in the description down below because it will be linked, and I ended up giving it a 5-star rating. I also read quite a large collection of shorter books and poems in the month of September, and that was the complete collection of stories and poems about Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne. I adored this. As a kid I was never able to read Winnie the Pooh. I read a lot of Disney books but I never read the classic originals where a lot of the stories came from, apart from a couple Hans Christian Andersen tales. So when I saw a gorgeous edition of this in a secondhand bookshop, I thought I'd pick it up, and I loved this. I can't wait to read this to potential future children that I might have. But yeah, I really loved this. I thought it was a really wonderful read. I really enjoyed it. The writing was beautiful and it just felt so British and reminded me of English countrysides and lands that I have grown up looking at. Really pure and light-hearted and so easy to read. I adored it. It has illustrations throughout as well, the edition that I have, and it was just so magical, so I couldn't give it anything other than a 5-star rating. I really wish I would have read these as a child. Sticking on the childhood Disney theme, I read Bravely by Maggie Stiefvater. I hope I'm saying her name right. This author, I read one of her books, or maybe two of her books, when I was a teenager. The Shiver series, I never completed it, but that was about werewolves and I remember it being very angsty, very Twilight-esque. So I figured I'd give this a go. It is a sequel to the film Brave, which I rewatched recently and actually really enjoyed it. I can't remember loving it as much as what I did the second time around, but it has been a while since I watched it the first time. So in this book we're following Merida as she's a little bit older and she meets two gods who essentially tell her that she needs to change the land of Dunbrook, which is where she's from, in a year because it is becoming stagnated and it's not keeping up with making alliances with other kingdoms, it's not keeping up with the way that the castle looks. It just seems to be falling apart a little bit, and the gods have decided that unless it will change, they will destroy it. There's a lot more to it than that, but I don't want to ruin it for you. It is a very magical, very wonderful story. The only reason why this doesn't get a 5-star rating from me is because I think that it relies too much on you having seen Brave to know why the main character is the way she is and know about the family. It doesn't actually really describe the way that they look at all. So again, that just feels like they're relying on you having seen the film, which I'm sure most people have, but you can't just assume that people have. So that's really the only thing that let it down for me. It is definitely a young adult book. It is quite cheesy, but I really enjoyed it. It was very adventurous, very fast-paced, and it went down avenues that I wasn't expecting it to, and I found it really fascinating. I liked learning about the old gods and I liked learning about the landscape of Scotland. I thought it was really beautiful. So this ended up being a 4-star rating for me. Definitely absolutely recommend it for Disney fans and people that loved the film Brave. The next book I read was definitely a nostalgic read, and that was a reread of Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. I genuinely really loved this book this time around. I used to love it as a teenager, but it's obviously very cheesy and it's got a bit of a bad rep to it now. But upon my reread, I thought it was just a classic vampire romance. It's everything that I wanted it to be. The main characters are a little bit whiny and they have got their flaws, but I think that's what makes me love it so much. And I don't think it's a terribly written book. It's not the best best book I've ever read, but I really enjoyed my reread and it was perfect for going into the colder months. This ended up being a 4-star rating for me. I don't think I will ever be able to give it 5 stars unless I'm completely focusing on the fact that I loved it as a teenager. So yeah, 4 stars. Now this is the book that I started in the month of September and finished a couple days into October, but I don't care, I'm going to include it. That is Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. I can't believe I finished this mammoth of a book. It was just under 900 pages and me and my friend were reading it a chapter at a time, although towards the end we definitely read more than one chapter at a time because we couldn't put it down. This is the third and final book in the Farseer trilogy where we are following Fitz. I've spoken about this series quite a lot on my channel, but I do have a full-length spoiler-free review for the first book, which I will leave linked down below. I can't say too much about the story, but it is a fantasy trilogy focusing on a very unique magic system. And I really loved this book. It was my favourite of the 3, definitely worth the nearly 900 pages that it took me and the month that it took me to read it. Yeah, I would definitely recommend giving this a go if you're looking for a new fantasy series to sink your teeth into, and this one ended up being a 5-star rating. And the final book that I read in the month of September is another non-fiction. This is almost like a memoir, I suppose, but it's actually about one of my favourite artists called Hayden Thorpe. He was originally in a band called Wild Beasts, which is my favourite band as well, but unfortunately they did split up. But from that, Hayden went off to do his own solo music, which I absolutely adore. I think it's very contemplative and it focuses on nature and spiritualism, and I just find it incredible. His voice is honestly like an angel's voice. Me and Callum have seen him live a couple times now and he sounds exactly the same, if not better, in person than he does in the studio recordings. But anyway, this is technically a zine, but it's quite a long one. I think it was 120 pages, just talking about what influenced him on the album, what influences him in music, talks about walks around his local area. I believe he lives in the Lake District. So very beautiful, stunning views, a lovely place to walk around and be inspired to write music. I found it fascinating. Obviously, if you're not interested in the artist or his music, or you don't like his music, then you're probably not going to find it very interesting, but I loved it, so for me it was a 5-star rating. So I actually ended up reading 7 books and one of them was very long, so I'm quite proud of myself. It felt like I didn't have a lot of time to read. I was getting a bit sad because I wasn't reading as much as I potentially wanted to, and out of those 7 books, 4 of them were 5-star ratings, so I honestly have nothing to complain about. I have been trying to read books that I'm almost certain I will enjoy, being very thoughtful when picking up new books now compared to what I used to be like, and focusing on topics and themes that I find fascinating, and it has been helping me to read a lot more books that end up being 4 to 5-star ratings. Please let me know what your favourite book from the month of September was. But that is everything from me today. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in my next video. Bye!